The Republican field for president is set to get even more crowded in the coming days. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie will reportedly announce his bid on Tuesday, while former Vice President Mike Pence is expected to give his kickoff speech in Des Moines, Iowa on Wednesday. They'll join 9 other declared candidates in the race, with several other lesser knowns expected to throw their names in the ring before the first primary debate in August. But new rules announced by the RNC just yesterday on who'll be allowed to participate in the debates may kill some of their campaigns before they even get off the ground. Joining me now, Doug Heye, Republican strategist and former RNC communications director, and Jennifer Rubin, MSNBC political analyst, Washington Post opinion writer, and author of Resistance: How Women Save Democracy from Donald Trump. Thank you both very much for being here and for being on set. Doug, I'm going to start with you because we need to talk strategy. Now, the RNC, as I said, announced that candidates must get 40,000 unique campaign donors across at least 20 states and at least 1% in multiple national polls, and agreed to support the eventual nominee if they want to be on that first primary debate stage in August. How do you see these rules reshaping the race?
Well, I think we can dismiss the last one as sort of meaningless. You can pledge to do that now,
right.
And if you don't win, that goes out the window.
Right.
The rest of it is designed to do 2 things. One, be able to show that you have real support, especially with that small dollar donor number, 40,000. That's significant. And the other is they want to avoid what we had in 2016, where we had the kids' table debate and then the adults' table Thanksgiving dinner debate, and how that really stilted things for Republicans. It certainly allowed Donald Trump to rise in the polls, but they're mindful that having 17 people on a debate stage is problematic, and having 17 people in a day on 2 different debate stages or back-to-back days is problematic as well.
Do you think that's going to work, Jennifer?
It may. It will certainly, I think, throw out some of the really marginal candidates. But, we don't even know if Donald Trump is going to show up. He may well decide, why do I need to do this? I'm way out ahead. I don't want to answer questions about my indictment or indictments, which may be plural by then. Why should he deign to get on the same stage as Ron DeSantis? And you remember when in 2016, he decided he would not participate in one of the Fox News debates. He just tweeted and criticized the debate from afar. And, of course, everyone in the media was following his tweets as opposed to the debates.
And that was a debate in Iowa. And Iowa likes attention. And Iowa likes very specific attention. They want you there, not just in Des Moines or Urbandale, but they want you in Winterset and Emmitsburg and places like that. That Trump was able to get away with that in Iowa is significant.
All right, so let's talk about the two fellas, the 2 dudes who are about to get into the race. First, Chris Christie. Jennifer, you wrote a column about basically why he's in the race. I have my theory, and I read your column, and we agree. Why is he in the race?
He is a bully to beat up bullies. So he is probably the only one with the kind of, I don't want to say gravitas, but the presence, the verbal skills to throw some real punches at both Trump and DeSantis. He is a former prosecutor, so he has no bones, I think, about going after Trump for the indictments and telling him and everyone else who's listening, these are real, they're not going to go away. Do you really want to nominate someone who is under indictment for serious charges? He's not, I think, in there to win it. He's in there to blow up the 2 frontrunners. And perhaps he thinks, well, maybe if I do that, someone else will get to win, and I'll either get to be vice president or attorney general.
Doug.
Well, look, he is a unique talent when it comes to popping people's balloons, and we saw that obviously in 2016. But if he's able to if he's able to burst Donald Trump's balloon, that's a lot to get out. Or if anybody else is, the race resets. It doesn't automatically become Ron DeSantis's. He may be the front runner at that point, but he's not the automatic nominee. If that race resets, there are a lot of people who all of a sudden we could see jousting for that first place or even a high second place moving into New Hampshire in South Carolina.
So given that, does that then provide a lane for former Vice President Mike Pence? Because I have a hard time seeing how the guy who was the vice president to the guy who stirred up an insurrection where people were running through the Capitol screaming, hang Mike Pence, how he's going to get their votes. So would that provide an opening for
potentially so, and especially if this comes before Iowa. Iowa's huge with evangelical voters. We saw Bob Vander Plaats on CNN last night saying Donald Trump should not be the nominee. That's significant.
That's huge.
It's a huge deal, and it signifies that the evangelical vote, regardless of where we see the polls right now, is still largely up for grabs. Mike Pence, that's his ideological, that's his safe home in Republican politics. So to write him off immediately because he crossed Trump, I think at this point is premature. We have to see how he gets in and what he does.